Our external world can be incredibly distracting and incredibly noisy. You have social media, endless scrolling, breaking news, deadlines for work, deadlines for your personal life, looking good for that date you're going to go on, making sure that, no one kind of talks bad about you and I've got to do this and I've got to do that. The environment that we live in really has a significant impact on our own mental health. There's no question about that. And it can therefore distract us from focusing on our inner world and focusing on ourself. We get so caught up with the busyness of life that impacts our stress level, and we're managing our stress, that we forget to truly listen to ourselves, not just for the purposes of managing stress, but the more fundamental purpose of being your true self in the world. There's a difference, and I've covered this in previous videos. There's a difference between being your true self and feeling things. They're not the same thing. Just because you feel very low or anxious doesn't mean that's really you. These emotions, particularly negative emotions, are signals that something is wrong, something is imbalanced. Because we are not, if we're naturally living according to our genuine principles, there's very little place for anxiety. So anxiety may well happen if you're, working towards a goal or something that's fulfilling you. There's going to be a degree of anxiety about that and uncertainty that you'll experience. However, ask yourself, is it because of that? Or is it because maybe the environment I'm living in is having a greater impact than I would like, is having more of a detrimental impact? Because our outside world is so distracting and because it's so easy to get caught up in it and easy to conform to it, it takes away from focusing on yourself and asking yourself, are you able to be fully you? Who else knows you better than you do? You may have close ones, family members, whoever, who know what your thoughts are. They might know how you feel about certain things, but do they know what it's truly like to be in your shoes? Do they know the opinions you have, how those opinions impact the way you perceive information, the way you perceive the world around you, the way you think about things, the way you analyze things? Who really knows that better than you? And because we can be so caught up in our environment, it can be very tempting to conform to standards that are imposed upon us, whether that's from someone or whether that's from society. It can just feel like it's the right thing to do, to conform to the environment I'm living in, because that plays to the adaptation process we have within us. I have to adapt to survive. And therefore, a part of me adapting is to conform to what the environment is demanding of me. But what is the consequence of that conformity? We just don't ask this question. We end up being stressed and we think, okay, work is stressing me. I've got to do something about it. I'm really, really down. I'm going to go see a doctor and get antidepressants and just try and figure out, why is this happening? Well, you have to question everything and question how much of your external environment is helping your mental health and how much it's hurting your mental health. So question, what role am I playing? And is this the role I want to continue to play? What are the long-term consequences if I continue to conform to my environment? And is that conformity contributing to my overall anxiety and stress? Now, the job of a counselor like myself is to understand my clients as much as I possibly can. Your thoughts, your feelings, your actions, your behaviors, your beliefs, your values, your perception of the world. The job of a counselor is to put themselves out and step into the client's shoes. And that doesn't mean what would I do if I was in my client's situation, because it's not about me. It's not about the counselor, it's about the client. So understanding where they're coming from and therefore developing a strong sense of empathy. So when the client shares their struggles, you have a greater connection because you understand where that client's coming from rather than, oh, that's wrong, you should do this, or that's wrong, you should do that. In counseling, part of the way I counsel people is to do solution focused work. So we will look at solutions and potential things, but really None of that matters if you don't try it for yourself and see what works for you and see what fits you, because there is no one size fits all. Now, one of the reasons that generally counselors don't give advice is because we don't need to. See, if I gave advice to my client, I'm basically saying, I know more than you, or I know what's best for you. Now, let's say the client took my advice and it worked out for them. Who wins? Does the client really win? I mean, they may, find a solution to that problem, but it didn't come from them, it came from me. That then fosters this reliance on the counselor. And this is what I'm completely against. I'm not sure how much of this happens in the field, but the training says you don't give advice. And this is what I don't do. I give advice. There might be things that I suggest in terms of things they could try to overcome it, but it's about the client finding their fit, their place in the world. So in order to understand your fit, this is where the self-awareness comes in. What problem am I having? What role am I playing in this problem? Has this been something that I've always done, or is it a recent thing? You ask yourself questions to get a better understanding of how you relate to this problem you're facing and why this problem exists in your life and why it's a struggle to overcome the problem. Is there something superficial that needs to be addressed, or is it something deeper? You ask yourself questions to build that self-awareness. And one of the reasons I started a YouTube channel, in fact, it's the main reason, is because I want to encourage as many people as possible to develop self-awareness. Self-awareness is the first step. I always used to think that self-awareness was it. If you're aware and you know what you have to do, then that's it. The rest is on you. It's actually not enough. Self-awareness by itself will not get rid of the problem. It's the accompanying action that has to be done on a consistent basis or as much as needed to get rid of the problem. But that action has to sit on top the skill set of applying discipline when needed, of shifting your attention from the negative to the positive if needed. All of these techniques that help you to undertake that action and help to manage the obstacles that get in the way of that. So self-awareness is like the foundation of the house. The bricklaying, one brick at a time, is you developing these skills, discipline, motivation, grounding, all of these things. And then the roof of the house is you essentially going for your goals, doing the action, finishing up the project. But if you don't have self-awareness, the whole thing's going to fall apart. It just doesn't work. So self-awareness is crucial, but it's the first step. The reason this work is so difficult, and generally the work in therapy is very challenging, is because it isn't just a kind of challenge of the mind and the logic. It's also a challenge of the emotions. And the thing with emotions is that you feel them. It's not necessarily something that you just think. You feel emotions, and some are, especially guilt, fear, can be paralyzing to the point it pushes you away. It's sending a signal, stop, I don't feel safe, stop doing this work. And there is something there around leaning into the resistance, taking the path of most resistance, which kind of goes against naturally what one would do. But this is the work it needs. You lean into it, you face it head on. So then you learn about the strength you have. And I will cover this in a future video. But the fact is that how we feel is not determined by us. You might be thinking, well, I'm feeling this thing. How is it not determined by me? Or why is it not me? I'm the one feeling it. No one's kind of installed this feeling in me. The reality is that when we're very young, when we're babies, when we're young children, we are subject to the environments that we grow up in. And we're subject to the people in those environments. If the people in those environments are coming from a place of empathy, where they have the ability to see the world through our eyes as an infant, and they bring compassion, patience, understanding, calmness, everything that that infant needs to feel safe and feel connected and feel loved. And that continues throughout their journey. And they checked in with allowing themselves to express how they feel and communicate their joy and be sad and feel safe to express all these emotions. It's very likely that that same person, when they grow up, will be better able to manage how they feel by way of learning that if I express how I feel safe, I feel heard and understood, and therefore I'm able to confidently assert how I feel in the world. Whereas if there's a child who was not given that same space or attention, was not shown empathy, was not shown that emotional love, and therefore did not have the opportunity to develop that emotional intelligence because they learned that if I cry, if I'm too joyous, then someone in my environment is going to shut me down, someone's going to yell at me, and I'll associate that expression of emotions with fear that I have to stop. And if that continues, then what that person will learn when they grow up is it's not safe to share how I feel. I need to keep my distance from people. Or maybe it's the other way. I need to attach to people because I'm so emotionally needy that I don't know how I'm feeling. So therefore, I need to get that validation from someone else. So the environment that you grow up in plays a huge factor. In fact, I think it's one of the main factors of how we feel as adults. And the work as adults is realizing actually the way I'm processing things and my relationship, this is not healthy. This is not the way that I want to continue. This is damaging the way I'm relating to others and the way they're relating to me. I need to fix this. And this is why counseling exists. This is why therapy exists, because we did not choose to feel the way we feel. So when you're feeling low or down or anxious, ask yourself, is this genuinely me? When did this start? Have I always been like this? Why am I like this? Why aren't I confident instead? Why do I feel I'm not able to be confident? Why does the thought of confidence make me uncomfortable? You have to ask yourself questions. So all of these questions is like pouring the cement for the foundation. The more you ask yourself questions, the more you stay with it, the more you work with it, the more you can build your self-awareness, the greater the chance you have of implementing tools to act in the way you want to in the future. I want to finish this video by saying that self-awareness is the first step, and consequent steps after that will be tools, techniques. You'll be better placed to use those tools and techniques if you have that self-awareness underneath it to really give it substance. Our environment can be very distracting, like I mentioned. It can sometimes numb us. We get so impacted by our environment and by the stress, we end up zoning out. And in those states, you are never yourself. You are never yourself. And we don't know just how strong we are in terms of our ability to manage emotions and be emotionally resilient. We are so much stronger than we think. But because we are often at the mercy of our environment and stressed and have to zone out and escape, we completely forget that. We don't even realize we have that inner strength. Until you start doing the work, you will notice it. It's painful. It can be painful. It can be very difficult. But with perseverance, you will build that strength very quickly because it already exists within you. If you feel it doesn't, then you have to ask yourself, what role do my emotions have in my life? And am I allowing it to overwhelm me? And does that mean that I have to start doing work to really build up my core strength in terms of emotionally managing and regulating myself? We are stronger than we think, and we have an immense capacity to lean into resistance and to manage very difficult emotions and to overcome any obstacle that we truly want to overcome. But it just begins with that first step. Thanks for watching.